In the quiet town of Ashbury, California, the morning after a devastating 7.2 magnitude earthquake in the spring of 2025 was anything but peaceful. Homes lay in ruins, streets were cracked wide open, and a thick cloud of dust hung low, turning the once familiar landscape into a scene of chaos and heartbreak. The tremor had struck just before dawn, leaving behind a silence that was eerie, punctuated only by the distant whir of helicopters and the crackling static of rescue radios. Amid the wreckage, emergency crews, volunteers, and firefighters worked tirelessly, their boots crunching over shattered bricks and broken glass as they called out names or dug with bare hands through splintered wood and crumbling concrete. Time was slipping away, and every faint sound carried the weight of potential life beneath the rubble. Then cutting through the haze came a sound no one could ignore, the sharp, rhythmic barking of a small, scrappy dog with matted fur and the wiry build of a shepherd mix. His name was Lucky, and he stood at the edge of a collapsed townhouse, paws planted firmly in ash and dust, tail stiff, barking with a purpose that refused to be dismissed. At first, the rescuers barely noticed. After all, barking dogs were common in disasters, often just panicked or confused. But Lucky was different. His eyes were locked on the debris, his body tense, and every few seconds, he'd turn to stare at the rescuers as if pleading for them to listen. After 15 minutes of his relentless noise, a volunteer finally dropped to her knees beside him, pressing her ear to the pile. Amid the drone of machinery and Lucky's steady barks, she heard it, a faint, muffled cry. "Baby!" she shouted, her voice trembling with urgency. "There's a baby down there!" Within seconds, a team swarmed the spot with shovels and crowbars, paramedics on standby. Lucky stepped back but stayed close, panting, his gaze unwavering. 2 hours later, they pulled a woman and her 3-year-old daughter, Ava, from the wreckage, alive, thanks to a dog whose instinct spoke louder than the chaos. In a nation that loves its underdog stories, Lucky's tale hit home. Sometimes it's the smallest voices that scream the loudest for hope. Before he became a beacon of hope in the rubble-strewn streets of Ashbury, California, Lucky was just another forgotten soul drifting through life's margins. A scrappy shepherd mixed with matted fur and no collar, he roamed the thick woods outside town, a skinny shadow barely noticed by the folks who caught fleeting glimpses of him near Highway 101 or rummaging through trash cans behind the local grocery store. To him, humans were a gamble. Hands could hurt more often than they helped, and his wary eyes told a story of survival earned the hard way. Winter hit Ashbury like a freight train the year before the earthquake, with temperatures plunging below 20 degrees Fahrenheit and food scarcer than ever. Lucky, limping from a nasty gash on his hind leg, likely snagged on barbed wire, was a skeletal figure by then, too weak to bolt when people approached. He'd lie still in the snow, waiting until Martha found him. A widow in her late 70s, living alone in a quiet house at the end of Sycamore Lane. She spotted him curled up behind her garden shed one icy morning, shivering, his glassy eyes barely open. Instead of shooing him off or calling animal control, she knelt beside him and whispered, "You don't have to be scared anymore." It took an hour to coax him inside and a week before he'd let her touch him. But Martha's patience turned a frightened stray into something new. She named him Lucky, and over time, his ribs vanished under a glossy coat. His panic faded, and he learned to nuzzle her hand as she read by the fire. For a year, they were each other's world. She'd hum in the kitchen, saying, "You're not just lucky, you're my luck," while he waited by the door each morning as she fed the birds. Then one spring day, Martha didn't come downstairs. Paramedics said she'd passed peacefully in her sleep, but Lucky didn't grasp peace. He howled until his voice broke, pacing by her bedroom door, refusing food for days. Neighbors took him to the shelter where he wilted, head down, food bowl untouched, until the 7.2 magnitude earthquake shook Ashbury in 2025. The shelter rattled, a kennel door popped open, and Lucky ran, covering nearly 5 miles through shattered streets, past toppled streetlights and smoking ruins. He stopped at a pile of twisted bricks and broken timber, barking with a certainty that defied his past. That day, he led rescuers to a trapped mother and child, proving that even a stray who'd lost everything could find purpose again. In a country that cherishes second chances, Lucky's leap from the shadows to the spotlight reminds us, sometimes the ones we save end up saving us right back. When a 7.2 magnitude earthquake tore through Ashbury, California in the spring of 2025, it left behind a town unrecognizable. Streets split open, homes reduced to jagged piles of debris, and a choking dust cloud that swallowed the morning light. Rescue teams fanned out across the wreckage, their radios crackling with urgency as helicopters buzzed overhead. Time was the enemy. Every second that ticked by could mean the difference between life and death beneath the rubble. Amid this chaos, Lucky, a scrappy shepherd, mixed with matted fur, stood barking relentlessly at a collapsed townhouse. His paws planted in ash, his tail rigid, his sharp, rhythmic barks slicing through the noise. At first, the rescuers, firefighters, volunteers, and paramedics, paid him little mind. Barking dogs were a dime a dozen after disasters, usually just spooked or lost. But Lucky wasn't barking out of fear. For 15 minutes, he refused to budge, pawing at cracked tiles and staring down the crew with eyes that demanded attention. A volunteer finally knelt beside him, pressing her ear to the shifting pile. Beneath the distant hum of machinery and Lucky's steady barks, she caught it, a faint cry, weak but unmistakable. "Baby!" she yelled, jumping up. "There's a baby down there!" The team snapped into action, shovels and crowbars flying, though doubt lingered. Thermal imaging showed no signs of life, and the unstable wreckage shifted with every move. Some whispered it was a long shot, but Lucky didn't waver. He stayed put, growling low when the crew paused, as if begging them not to quit. For nearly 2 hours, they dug through layers of plaster, insulation, and splintered wood, carving a tunnel just wide enough for a camera probe. What flickered onto the screen stole their breath. A woman, barely conscious, shielding her 3-year-old daughter, Ava, between two leaning walls, surrounded by 10 feet of debris on all sides. Dust caked their faces. The mother's leg was pinned, her lips cracked, while Ava's breaths came shallow. "They're alive," someone whispered. Lucky leaned toward a crevice, his snout stretching through to lick Ava's tiny hand. A tender moment caught on a rescuer's phone, shared nationwide before the dust even settled. With braces and backboards, they pulled the pair free after 12 grueling hours underground. The crowd beyond the yellow tape erupted as Ava, wrapped in a foil blanket, blinked into the sunlight. A firefighter, voice cracking, said, 30 minutes more, and they'd have been gone. That dog saved them. In a nation glued to breaking news and viral heroes, Lucky's race against time struck a chord. Proof that instinct can outpace technology, and one stubborn bark can rewrite a tragedy into a miracle. In the wake of the 7.2 magnitude earthquake that left Ashbury, California, a maze of shattered streets and broken dreams in 2025, one small dog's actions rippled far beyond the rubble. Lucky, the scrappy shepherd mix, whose relentless barking led rescuers to save a mother and her 3-year-old daughter from a collapsed townhouse, didn't just stop at heroism. His story became a legacy of hope that touched hearts across the nation and reshaped a community's spirit. After the rescue, Lucky's image, dusty fur, alert eyes, and a gentle lick to little Ava's hand through a crevice, went viral, shared on screens from Times Square to small-town diners. News anchors called him the dog who listened when no one else did, and hashtags trended as Americans from coast to coast saw in him a symbol of resilience. But Lucky's impact grew deeper when he became a certified therapy dog, trained with local handlers to bring comfort to those scarred by trauma. He visited hospitals 50 miles from Ashbury, where children, silenced by fear, reached for his fur, and disaster recovery centers, where survivors wept into his coat. Schools shaken by crisis welcomed him, and wherever Lucky went, hope trailed quietly behind, like a warm breeze after a storm. In Ashbury's rebuilt town center, a bronze paw print plaque now marks the exact spot where he barked for nearly 2 hours to save lives. Inscribed with, "He barked until hope was heard," it draws visitors who leave flowers, photos, and notes. Many strangers who never met Lucky but felt his story in their bones. His journey from a nameless stray, once scavenging along Highway 101, to a national icon struck a chord with a country that loves its underdog tales. Think Rocky Balboa with four paws. Lucky's life with Ava and Elena, his adoptive family, showed healing in action. Ava's nightmares eased with his steady presence, and Elena found peace in their bond. Yet his reach extended further, reminding Americans of the power in overlooked souls. The shelter that once housed him saw adoption inquiries spike, as families inspired by Lucky sought to give other dogs a chance. Social media overflowed with tributes, artwork, posts, even a mural in downtown Ashbury, celebrating a dog who proved instinct could outshine technology. In a nation often divided, Lucky's story united people, from truckers in Texas to teachers in Maine, around a simple truth. Courage doesn't need a pedigree. That bronze plaque, glinting under California's sun, stands as more than a marker. It's a promise that even in our darkest hours, a small voice can lead us to light. Lucky didn't just save 2 lives, he showed us all how to keep barking until hope is heard, a legacy that'll echo for years to come. Lucky's journey from a stray surviving harsh winters to a hero who saved lives during Ashbury's 2025 earthquake teaches us that resilience can turn pain into purpose. No matter how broken life feels, we can keep going, finding strength in unexpected places. His relentless barking reminds us to trust our instincts and persist, even when others doubt us. Sometimes pushing through skepticism leads to miracles. Lucky was a forgotten soul, yet his small voice changed everything. Proof that everyone, no matter how insignificant they seem, has worth and potential to make a difference. Finally, his bond with Ava and Elena shows that healing often comes through connection, not isolation. In our own lives, we can apply this by refusing to give up during tough times, listening to our gut when logic alone isn't enough, uplifting those society overlooks, and seeking relationships that mend our wounds. Lucky's story isn't just about a dog. It's a call to live with courage, hope, and heart, knowing even the smallest steps can leave a lasting mark.